Welcome back. Before we get started with the next step of our project, I want to mention a couple of items about our videos. We are making this series with general interest and entertainment in mind, and the education components as sort of a positive byproduct. If you're watching this because you think you may build a house or a structure at some point, you're doing the right thing by learning as much as you can before starting that process. That being said, there is no bigger or more important choice that you can make regarding a building project than the selection of the contractors you might hire. These individuals and companies have an enormous ability to impact your project, both for good and for bad. We have a selection of videos available to our supporters about how to find and hire the right contractor. If you're supporting on Patreon or on our website, you can access those videos. But if you're the type of person who would prefer to read and consume the information that way, we have an ebook that you can pick up on Amazon. It's only $5, which is less money than a box of screws, but it could really, easily help you in selecting and working with a contractor. Even if you just scan this little book and come away with one or two helpful tips, you will get your money's worth. Back to our project here. Now that we know that our system works for building the walls and overhangs at the same time and lifting it all at once, it's time to get started on our main gable end walls. These are the walls located at each end of the main portion of our house. They are defining and holding up the roof, just like the garage gable end wall that we put up in the last episode, but they are holding and locating a lot of other things besides just the roof lines, which we'll talk about through this episode. Unlike the rest of the walls in this house, these gable end walls do not have identical top and bottom plates. So I can't just detail a bottom plate and transfer it to the top plate and then infill and match with the studs and various members. Yes, I do have a bottom plate, but the top plate is on a slope, so I can't really detail it the way I would a normal top plate. So what I've done is create a story pole. This story pole is sort of like a mobile/adjustable top plate, or think of it sort of like a giant yardstick with all the details clearly marked. So I'm moving it up the wall. You got to visualize the wall being built on the floor here. Keeping it square to the building itself, and thus square to the wall that I'm laying out, and transferring the marks from the pole down onto the deck. Once all the marks are on the deck, we're going through and snapping all of the lines and locations of studs, trimmers, windows, corbels, posts, all of the different components that have to make up this wall.
3 times 2. Again. 8, 11 foot 10, 12 foot 10, 15 4.
So with the little gable end on the end of the garage under our belts, and as far as I can tell at this point, a bullseye, it's a direct hit. The gable end process and the product is just right, and so I have confidence now to tackle this bigger balloon-framed gable end wall that I've been laying awake nights thinking about for quite a while. When I bring the process from the little wall over to this one, it's going to work beautifully, except there's more of it. There are more of the details that had to be accommodated in the little wall in this one, like maybe 5 or 6. So the first of those items is the size and the shape. The second of those items is the location of the hold downs. Remember the difficulty and the attention we've paid to these hold downs all the way up? We're not quite done. The hold downs on the south end of the house transfer all the way up into the gable end wall. So those things have to line up. There are 2 windows that have to be exactly where they have to be. There are two big beams that pocket into this wall and have to have posts installed to accommodate and hold up the ridges on the front part of this house. There are 7 corbels, 7, and the locations on those don't only have to be exactly right vertically to come out to hold up the overhang right, but they have to be spaced as close to equidistant as we can across the front of the house so that they look good, because they are a big part of the curb appeal of the house. There are the brackets, the attachments that I welded together in the shop that have to attach to the top plate securely enough to hold half the weight of the wall as the crane begins to lift the wall off the floor. That first 12 inches or 16 or 24 inches of lift, these things are going to have a serious twisting moment as it lifts the wall. It's not just lifting, but it's going to want to twist that top plate right off. So these things have to be put in properly. It's a real pleasure building this wall with it all snapped out, jigged up, the plates are in and braced and toenailed down, and we know they're not moving, and so it's just nice work. It's cutting angles and measuring lengths and scribing and blasting it together, and there's a real reward in nailing something together, new lumber, new project, stepping back and seeing what you got done at the end of the day. Clearly, these walls can't be raised with wall jacks, and clearly our forklift is not tall enough to reach it, so that means we're bringing a crane in. Right now he's scheduled about 5 days out. I don't know if we'll be ready or not, because we have 2 more walls to build. We have the matching Gable End Wall, which has similar components, nearly identical, not as many windows, but a doorway and some complications around its intersection with the garage roof. And then we have one more half gable wall to build out in the transition area between the house and the garage, and all those things will have to be set with the crane at once. We don't want to bring him back when each wall is ready. Besides that, there are 3 big, heavy roof beams that need to be installed at the same time that the walls are lifted. So we prep everything, we anticipate everything, we lay out everything, we get everything bolted up and nailed up and ready to lift, and then when the crane gets here, that is going to be an invigorating day for sure. I'm getting started on the other Gable End wall, which is sort of a mirror image. It has the same roof line, same size, same beam pockets, same lifting bracket requirements. Not the same windows though, just a single doorway. But this wall is different enough that I'm making a new story pole to get the locations of these members all correct. Exactly correct. We will have 2 big beams spanning the 40-foot length of the house at and near the ridge. So each beam will need a post to hold up each end. We're using 6x6 free of heart center Douglas fir posts in this wall to accomplish that. One of these posts comes to rest on top of a window header. Actually, in 2 different cases. The weight of the beam and the roof loads above gets transmitted down to window or door headers, which then transmit the load to trimmers, which transmit the load down through the first floor walls to our foundation. All of these calculations are part of the work that Dave Thomas did for us as our structural engineer. As you can see, we are utilizing pretty much every square inch of this second floor to build these walls. And it looks a little cramped, but the truth is, it worked out pretty well. There were 2 sets of stairs that brought us up to the deck in 2 different places. The space over the garage was handy for storage and staging, and there was just enough room between the walls to move and work and get around without too much interference. Just like the other upstairs walls, we're sheeting these while they are on the ground. Now, I knew it at the time, but it's even clearer to me now that I really missed an opportunity here. I should have been prepared to not just sheet these walls, but attach all of the tape, the house wrap, the windows, the siding, and the trim while they were down like this, at least on the south wall. But this work was being done in the first part of September, just when the seasons are beginning to think about changing. And rain was coming, and I was pretty much singularly focused on getting a roof on the house as the highest priority. So we'll just have to come back later and add all those items off of scaffolding or maybe a snorkel lift or something. We'll see what we come up with when the time comes. One of the challenging parts of building this wall, well, laying it out really, was determining the locations of these corbels. They needed to be spaced evenly, attached solidly, and avoid any interference with windows or beams or post pockets, and in one case even interfering with the adjoining garage roof. Once the subfascia and barge rafters are up, we just start nailing on the overhangs themselves, with the same nice tongue-and-groove car decking. I wish it was possible for me to convey to you the mix of both excitement and confidence, anxiousness and nerves I was consumed by as I see these walls come together. You got to understand, I've been visualizing this for a long time now. In fact, whatever else I was building, this was always in the back or front of my mind. Now, I mentioned that this is not the most complicated house in the world, but this is a situation that I've never dealt with before in quite this way. Combine that with the fact that the cameras are on, and it's kind of a public thing at this point, and you might see where I'm coming from. The thing that these videos can't convey also, that is making this really challenging, frankly a little scary, is the access issues. If you watched us tilt up that garage gable end wall, you'll agree that it wasn't that big a deal when you can get a lift or a crane or a man bucket or, something right there to help with the process. But on this other end of the house, it's really a long ways to the ground, with only about a 5-foot strip of level ground to stand on. Now, the crane we're going to use will be able to do this, but I'm telling you, it's even a bit of a stretch for the crane that we're using. Having seen this work on the garage wall, though, and seeing these walls here strong and straight and ready to go, primarily I'm just excited and looking forward to what will be for me the climax, or maybe, if you will, the summit of the framing of our spec house. This 1x3 that I'm putting up on our barge rafter is known as a shingle mold. It's a trim piece, but it is doing some work. It's helping to hold the edge of the shingles up and out so the water gets away from the barge rafter. Now, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but all of the nails I'm using on this overhang are galvanized. Galvanized nails, especially a hot-dipped galvanized, is pretty much your best bet for a fastener that will resist rust if you don't want to spend the money for stainless steel. Because sometimes rust will show up right through the paint, so don't take a chance. And if it's going to be outside, use a galvanized nail. Thanks for watching, and keep up the good work.